The International Criminal Court is now in session.
In March 2012, 10 years after it was set up, the International Criminal Court finally secured its first conviction against the Congolese warlord Thomas Lubanga.
Mr. Thomas Lubanga Dailo is guilty of the crimes of conscripting and enlisting children under
Lubanga was later sentenced to 14 years in prison for the war crimes of recruiting child soldiers and using them to participate in hostilities.
I think that the court, in pursuing that case, was to a large extent feeling its way because it was the first case. They were very anxious to get it right.
But as a result of the implementation of the common plan to build an army...
The case against Mr. Thomas Lubanga Dailo has raised a number of challenges, first regarding the contact with the victims,
boys and girls under the age of 15,
to facilitate their participation, to make their voices heard inside the courtroom before the judges, but also to protect the different witnesses. We have also the obligation to translate the whole procedure to a language that the suspect fully understand. And we need to train specific translators and interpreters to be able to deal with our obligations in regarding this linguistic issue.
2002.
One of the reasons why the Lubanga case took so long was the logistical difficulties with dealing with witnesses, in particular in a very unstable environment, which is the Northern Democratic Republic of Congo. I have to say, I don't think the prosecutor managed the case especially well. There were some suggestions that some of the witnesses were not always entirely honest with the court. And it has to be said that actually the trial chamber disregarded a great deal of the witness evidence which the prosecutor brought.
Many people with first-hand experience of the events in question were too afraid to come forward, so the ICC used intermediaries, local people who worked for the court, to find witnesses and elicit evidence from them.
Where international crimes are being committed, we tend to be dealing with conflict or post-conflict societies. And, of course, people who are being prosecuted before the International Criminal Court are very powerful local actors, and even the possibility of somebody having cooperated with the court could lead to reprisals being taken against them and their families.
Barrister Rebecca Wilson worked for a non-governmental organisation in The Hague, which represented women who were victims of sexual violence during the civil war in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But while the ICC was aware while the Lubanga case was ongoing that the DRC conflict involved multiple allegations of rape, no one was charged with the offences.
Our role as an independent NGO was to make sure that women's voices were firmly heard within that court process.
A number of military training camps were added.
We hoped that we would ensure there was a woman's perspective within that case and those proceedings. And so we worked with organisations that were based within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in particular women's organisations, to try and make sure that, for example, they could be recognised as victims in the case.
An order relating to the...
Unfortunately, in the indictment, there were no charges at all concerning crimes of gender-based violence.
Mr. Lubanga will remain in custody, and that concludes this hearing.
Despite its achievements, the ICC has been widely criticised for obtaining just 2 verdicts in its 10-year existence, 1 conviction and 1 acquittal.
It is not quick, but getting things right isn't quick. And I think what we need to do is to look to see where we are in another 10 years, to see whether 1 case every 10 years is going to be the modus operandi of the court, or whether in fact it was starting in first gear. Although international criminal courts aren't cheap, they're far cheaper than fighter jets. And in the end, if the message has to be reinforced that international crimes must be punished and that powerful people must be held accountable, then that in itself is a worthy goal.
Get more from the Open University. Check out the links on screen now.